Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Automation Village. I am Chris.
And I'm Natasha, and welcome to spring. So for those of us that live in a cold, snowy climate, we made it, we did it, we're through winter, it is spring.
And in honor of spring, we are wearing the spring line of automation fashion. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on. Also later on, we're going to get industry news from Keith Donaldson from our Scotland office.
And right here in Nova Scotia, Dave Spencer is going to join us with a VTScada tip and trick.
And we're all going to gather around the automation roundtable after that.
And Chris is going to come back with a SCADA documentary on virtualization a little later in the show.
It's virtually finished. Mm-hmm. And finally, we're going to talk about VTScadafest, which just wrapped up a few weeks ago in Orlando, Florida. We're going to talk about that big success and also some of the awards that we gave out there.
That's right. And as Chris mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about fashion, and mostly it's how you can win one of these shirts. So, but for now, let's go to Keith with the news. Hey, Keith.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, Chris and Natasha, how are you?
Great.
So what's up in the news these days?
Well, we kick off with a report that America's electrical system is long overdue for an overhaul. This 2021 American Society of Civil Engineering report finds that 70% of the transmission and distribution lines are over 25 years old. So yeah, no shock that the large sustained outages are occurring with increased frequency throughout the whole country. Last year, there were major outages in California and Texas. Both were triggered by extreme weather events causing local power demand to exceed the supply. And with climate change fueling extreme weather events, plant and city managers are increasingly turning to artificial intelligence technologies to predict energy consumption days in advance, mitigating the potential of power outage incidents and increasing overall power grid reliability. So these artificial intelligence and machine learning technologies are entering this grid ecosystem because of their ability to learn from the usage patterns and provide accurate predictions of future needs, making this technology, it's just perfect for grid management. Artificial intelligence is ideal for analyzing the huge amounts of data that have been produced by the factories and plants and allowing this accurate prediction where they can determine where there's an abundance of energy supply so they can charge up batteries versus when to drain them. And domestic customers are getting in the act too, because they can decide when, for example, to charge their electric vehicles, their electric cars, based on time of use pricing of energy.
Yeah, these kinds of conversations around data analytics are becoming so much more common these days in the SCADA and HMI world, where you've got somebody coming into like our booth at the trade show and saying, I've got this historian, I've got like 30 years worth of historical data that's piling up in there. What do I do with this? Do you have any kind of data analytics or machine learning that can allow us to make actual changes in the system that are impossible for a human eye to see on a spreadsheet?
Absolutely. So when you have these large amounts of data, big data, I guess, is it's termed. It's ideal for putting into artificial intelligence systems for the machine learning. So the learning process of a neural network, for example, so that you can then try and predict future outcomes based on the current data at hand.
So now what I take from this little news segment, something that hits a little closer to home, is talking about the power outages, because I know Keith and we both suffered bad power outages this past winter. We'll compare notes here a little bit. I went 47 hours in an ice storm and it was 27 below 0 Celsius. Keith, what say you about your power outage?
Well, I had 7 days without power, but the temperature only dropped to -3 degrees centigrade. So I'm gonna give you that one, Natasha.
I'm the winner.
And I live on the same grid as a major hospital, so I think I'm the winner.
Yeah, well, in terms, yes, you are the winner.
I had to reset the microwave.
Oh, that's always the worst. What else do you got for us, Keith?
Well, Trihedral Engineering, who actually sponsor the Automation Village, were awarded the IEC 62443-4-1 certification.
Now, can you speak at all? Can you speak at all to the maturity level of this designation?
Well, I can indeed. So the security development life cycle practiced by Trihedral Engineering in development of VTScada has been assessed as meeting the requirements for maturity level 2.
Sweet.
There we go. What this means in practice, it is. In practice, this means that Trihedral Engineering are following a set of development procedures which conform to industry standards. So they use that when they're developing their flagship SCADA software product, VTScada, ensuring that there are no unsafe practices. So one of the outcomes of this will be a procedure for management, development, and testing of the software, and security guidelines manual, which can be used by our customers or our customers using VTScada to ensure that they are following best practices for installation, development, and deployment of VTScada systems.
Okay, so can you tell us a little bit about then what changed in terms of our practices?
Sure. Well, for when I was researching this segment, I spoke to Steve Pomeroy, who's one of VTScada developers, and he was heavily involved in gaining this certification. And he explained that actually there weren't too many changes to the internal development procedures because Trihedral were already following best practice standards. What this does is it formalizes it and documents it. It makes it available for external audit to prove, I guess, and to certify that those standards are being adhered.
Perfect. And I'd like to just take a quick little beat here for a second for anybody who is new watching the Automation Village this go around. And you might be wondering, what's Trihedral and VTScada have to do with the Automation Village? So the Automation Village is hosted by VTScada, which is our Trihedral Engineering flagship product that Keith mentioned, VTScada. So now you're all caught up to speed on how we all work together. What's the last item you got for us, Keith?
Well, the last item I have is the announcement of a new malware toolkit known as PipeDream. It's perhaps the most versatile toolkit that's ever been made to target critical infrastructure like power grids and oil refineries. Earlier this month, the Department of Energy, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, the NSA, and the FBI, they jointly released an advisory about this new hacker tool set, potentially capable of meddling with a wide range of industrial control systems equipment. Now, more than any industrial control system hacking toolkit before, and you'll have may remember Stuxnet, which was aimed at Siemens PLCs. This suite of tools are targeting programmable logic controllers, PLCs, that are sold by Schneider Electric and Omron, and are designed to interface between like the traditional computers running SCADA systems and the actuators and sensors in an industrial environment. Another component of the malware is actually designed to target the Open Platform Communications Unified Architecture, or OPC-UA, as you may know it. These servers, and these are the the computers, the SCADA systems that are interfacing with the PLCs. Now, PipeDream appears to be specifically targeting, as I mentioned, Schneider and Omron, but it does this by exploiting the underlying software in those PLCs, known as CodeSys, which is used by a whole range of hardware manufacturers.
Right. And for the sake of my dad, can you tell us a little bit about what CodeSys is?
Oh, cool. Hello, Chris's dad. Yeah, CodeSys.
Hi, Dad.
CodeSys is actually a controller development system. It's a development environment for programming controller applications and it does this according to the international standards, the IEC 61131-3. So what does this really mean? Well, it actually, CodeSys was an attempt to try and standardize PLC programming across multiple manufacturers. So in fact, although it's been aimed or targeted at the Schneider and Omron, which might be down to the industries that they're very heavily involved in, which is power distribution and liquefied natural gas production. Actually, I think a number of other areas, sectors, and vendors may be affected.
Okay, so what are some practical things that people can do that have these PLCs?
Good question. I guess it's really part of the overall security infrastructure and concern about whether your PLC hardware is accessible from the outside world. Really, it should be behind a firewall on private networks. Making sure that your PLC is running the latest firmware, upgrades and security patches, and really just becomes part of the overall SCADA data acquisition infrastructure to make sure that all the threats angles are and the attack vectors are analyzed to make sure that your system is overall secured.
So I just want to give a shout out to whoever does the branding for all these exploits, like Pipestream and Sasquatch and Bing Bong. Like these are incredible. I want to get in on that business. It seems to be a booming industry.
Sure,
sick of the merch.
Well, you're not going to plug a pipe dream USB key into your computer now, are you?
It writes itself. It's perfect. You set up a booth, people will just grab that stuff in handfuls.
Well, thank you, Keith, for joining us for the news. Don't go too far. I'm going to bring you back later in the show for Questions with Nat. I've got a real stinger for you. So I'm going to bring you back for that. So don't go anywhere quite yet. For links to all of these news items that Keith talked about today, I am going to put the links over on the forum because the Automation Village is a two-part along with this very fun monthly show. We do have a forum that has a wealth of knowledge there as well. So I'm going to put some links over there to the things that Keith talked about today. And Keith will be back with us later on in the show and next month for the news. So now I guess we'll send it over to Dave Spencer with tips and tricks.
Over to you, buddy.
Today I have one of the simplest quick tips for you, and the key to it is right here in this bag. But before we get into it, a little background. VTScada makes it easy to export ad hoc data to a variety of formats using this little button. Okay, you already knew that and that it works great everywhere except here on the Alarms and Events page, where that magic little button just does not exist. So although there are a ton of ways to get the data out of the Alarms and Events database, this is the simplest one. Yep, you're right. It is that easy, and we probably should have told you this ages ago, but here it is. So you're just gonna click into that table and you're gonna do a Control-C copy, a Control-V paste right into Excel or whatever program it is you're looking to paste the data into. And remember, you can always filter the data using the filters in VTScada's Alarm and Events database to show exactly what you want before copying it out. Now, my question is, do you want to see a copy button in VTScada, or is remembering that you can do a Control-C copy, a Control-V paste good enough? Let me know the answer to that down either in the chat or in the comments below. Well, that does it for the quick tip for today. I'm Dave Spencer, and I hope you found this helpful.
For those of you who tune in religiously, we say on a month-by-month basis, you'll remember that Pam has been the moderator and a great contributor to the Automation Village. You're not going to be doing our panel. In fact, we're changing the name of our panel because Data Wave is going to stay with you. So tell us a bit about what you're up to.
Well, after 42 years in the biological science and 35 or so of those in the water industry, I decided to retire. It's time to enjoy other things and explore other possibilities in the volunteer world for sure. It's been such an honor to work with Hawk and Aquatic Informatics, you know, following Clifford and Catherine Hawk's legacy. It's been so much fun working with you guys on the Automation Village, but just a lot out there to do. So some of the fun things I want to do is, many of you guys know I'm a big volunteer. So a lot of it's still going to be tied to water quality, which is, I guess, not a big surprise to most people. First off, you know, here at the beach, we have a large Emerald Isle Sea Turtle Protection Program, over 400 volunteers. And again, it's all about water quality and protection of the sea turtles and giving them a chance to be able to have their babies and those babies hit the water. Volunteering with the North Carolina Aquarium, all kinds of automation and water chemistry involved. So pretty excited about that. So hopefully I'll come up with some great stories as a guest person coming into the Automation Village, you know, Coastal Federation here in North Carolina, Water Mission down in Charleston, still being engaged in AWWA and WEF, absolutely, for sure. Serving as the AWWA liaison to the Water Professionals International group that does operator certification. So lots of things going on out there. So pretty excited.
So in terms of your contributions and continuing contributions, it's going to be, we've deliberately left it that it's going to be kind of on an ad hoc basis. We massively value your insight because, you know, whether it's water, sensing, whatever, it's so much. So we're going to have you as our official Automation Village correspondent as well. So liaising with us. So we're really looking forward to having you continuing to guest. And we're, as we said, DataWave is going to stay with your name. So we're certainly looking forward to having you contribute on so many different fronts as well, Pam. And we'd like to congratulate you on an amazing career.
Thank you. And
look forward to engaging further with you as well on the Automation Village. I want to thank you for all your contributions on the DataWave Roundtable, and now on your own DataWave channel that we're going to continue to reach out to you about.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you to you guys for putting this together, and everybody who joins us every month or watches it either live or not live. This is our community. This is what we do. And remember, like I said, keep dreaming, never stop learning, keep your customer first. We're all in this together. Absolutely. So thank you guys very much. We'll see you on the wave.
Okay, well, thanks very much. We are here at our monthly slot for our roundtable. And as usual, I'm joined by Lee Kibler from Riviera Utilities and Ian Schmertzler from Dispel. Hi, guys.
Hey.
So good to be with you guys.
Well, I really appreciate that you're with us this week as well, Lee, because you're actually traveling as well. So you're in a nice part of the country.
Yeah, we're sitting in a Panera parking lot. Thank you, Panera. Not sponsored, but thank you anyway.
That's great. So guys, as we kind of move forward, we're going to have a number of different people that we'll bring in as well, you know, to be part of our panel. And again, thanks, Pam. We've enjoyed having you for the last 2 years. It's hard to believe, and we're looking forward to having you in your new slot. So Lee, this month we were going to talk around virtualization. So what are your thoughts surrounding virtualization?
Oh man, virtualization is a wonderful thing. We actually use virtual servers in our organization, but they're all on premises. So that, you know, that gives us a lot of flexibility as far as having applications. You know, typical old way we used to do things is lots of different applications were loaded on one server, so you had a single point of failure with an operating system. So if the operating system crashed, we would end up with losing all these different applications. And so what we've gone to now is a virtual server in our OT network, and it allows us to have individual servers that can be backed up and spun up. And that's a key factor. I'll tell you a little story about what happened to us during during our plant startup. It's an OT versus IT kind of paradigm where we ended up with a wireless controller spun up on a virtual server that was under the realm of OT, and it wasn't under IT's domain anymore. So the IT department spun up the virtual server. The software was installed, and lo and behold, about 6 months later, the VM crashed, and guess what? No backup, because it wasn't an IT server. So it didn't fall under their standard operating procedure to back up. So it was just sitting out there, and we were totally unaware that our pants were, we were getting ready to be exposed because we have no way of controlling all these wireless controllers. So as those controllers turned off, they lost their configuration, and boom, they were no longer working. So the word to the wise is this: is don't assume that OT and IT protocols line up. You need if you're in operations or anything like that in a utility, you need to verify that these servers are being backed up and they're being held to the same operating procedure as your IT networks are as well, as far as like documentation, backups, antivirus, software backup, firmware updates. All these things need to all happen, even if they are on a segmented network, even quasi-departmentally different.
Do you think
the other thing?
Yeah, I was going to say. Do you think that it is commonplace that people kind of virtualize something and unfortunately leave themselves with a huge gaping hole that they're not aware of?
We didn't. It was an assumption. Whenever you assume something in this world, guess what? Assuming makes a fool out of you and me.
Yes.
That's a polite way of saying it. But anyway, yeah. Luckily, the vendor bent over backwards and took care of the utility and reconfigured the firmware. But hey, the VM. But we could have been stuck paying for configuration twice had they really dug their heels in. The other thing we do in the utility side of the thing is, hey, you need to know what your exposure is. You can't have virtual spare parts, okay? You need to know that you have all your physical assets. Like if you have a VM on premises, you need to make sure that you have a spare server or some other way of spinning that network back up and not have a single point of failure. You know what I'm saying? Ian, can you kind of, I think that's kind of your specialty.
Yes. So what I would say is, if you are virtualizing things, if you haven't started virtualizing things and you're asking yourself, why in the world should I? The reason why people virtualize things are, one, it's easier to make them redundant systems, and two, it's easier to do updates to them. So ironically, whilst that is often the first hiccup people have, which is they virtualize stuff and then they forgot to set up parallel systems. Because virtualization allows you to fractionalize your processing power, what it also allows you to do is it's not that expensive to have two platforms that are virtualization platforms running in parallel. And by that, I mean it costs less than, in all likelihood, just buying a full freestanding application on a box routine. So what that means is that you can pretty quickly start creating systems that toggle back and forth. So you have one that's running, one's off. You update that other system. You make sure it works, and then you flick the switch. So from my standpoint, it is in fact a resiliency tool. The hardware piece, though, is just, so Lee, you're dealing with both A, the hardware supply chain issue, and B, the people issue. So I throw the ball back to you on that one.
Hey, spare parts, man. It doesn't matter whether you're talking a computer board or a soft starter for a motor control center. All this stuff, you better know your exposure right now because of the supply chain things that are going on in China. I've been waiting on a part right now for oh God, 6 months. Thank God we had a backup across the line starter in the control panel, or the entire headworks of our plant would have been down for 6 months. Or we would have been paying engineering people to come in to re-engineer the controls to be able to use a competitive part. So, yeah, I have one takeaway from this. Hey, man, do an inventory of what you got on hand, and the things that you do not, if you've got single points of failure, you can't virtualize spare parts. You can't look at it in a catalog, and make sure when you order that part, get your lead times, because you cannot assume that part, even if the vendor tells you 6 weeks, assume 12, because that's the truth.
If I can jump in there.
Yeah.
There's one thing, speaking as a vendor, there's a way that vendors will try to save money on things, which is, even in the virtualization world that we operate in, there is a time to prepare and configure with an automated system a virtual machine. So frequently what ends up happening is, because these virtual machines cost money, you find companies, as they get larger, compressing the number of virtual machines they keep in inventory. So that way, if one goes down, they can spin up another and provision it. Yep. One thing you should do, all ye listeners, is if you are relying upon third-party providers who are using virtual things, ask them to provide you with details on the supply chain of assets that are sitting in inventory, ready to go if anything goes down inside of their own environments. These will be described as bills of lading sometimes, or as the product inventory design list. You just say it in plain English, they'll know what you're talking about.
Great point. So in terms of when people kind of sometimes farm out the virtualization of a system, they may actually farm it out to a completely independent company, and those companies could maybe state, oh yeah, we have a lot of expertise in virtualization of systems, and yes, they put it on your favorite cloud provider. Have either of you kind of come across, we'll say, that the expertise in some of those companies did not actually materialize when it comes to, we call it the depth of their knowledge when it came to your applications?
Well, our utility does everything under their power to avoid going outside the company. So I think our primary outsourced piece of networking these days is like Census AMI equipment. So really our exposure to outside forces is basically self-induced, and we are now we're having to add people. You can't have it both ways. You're either going to bring everything in-house, or you're going to send things out. But you can't say, okay, we're going to bring things in-house, but we're not going to have people. So right now we're having to hire people actively. So because we were doing the latter. We were just saying we're going to do everything ourselves, but we're just going to work one IT person into the ground. And she almost quit. So we had to find some people.
Very good. What about you, Ian?
From my experience, it's the distance between the people who are running the public clouds and the people who are able to build applications that work efficiently across multiple different cloud providers is quite small. It's the classic case of, if you know one language, if you know two languages, it becomes easier to learn three. And that community of people who are able to handle different types of virtualization infrastructure, and in turn build systems that can flex if something goes down in Texas, as they are wont to do around hurricane season, it's not that small, as a matter of fact, but it's also a tight-knit group of people. So I have found that when I go and I work with a large professional company, you come to expect a certain quality of service, and you get it, and you get what you pay for. But if you want that wild, crazy, bleeding edge stuff that sometimes you need, you're going to just have to accept that it might not work all the time, but they're going to do their best. And if you don't buy it from them, well, they're not going to be there in time to be stable. So
good point.
That happens too. In your world, you guys have to deal with virtualization all the time too. So what's it like over there?
Yeah, it's tricky because when it comes down to kind of the implementations, I guess it's always hard to kind of describe to someone that, look, this is out there from the possibility of something failing or whatever, you know, even in a virtual world, that your system may or may not actually perform as expected because, you know, someone doesn't maybe either pay for quite enough resilience in their system. And that's something that I guess we've come across, and that really goes back to something you said, Ian, which was you know, multi-data center resilience. So even to use multiple platforms. So you take your AWS and you have one virtualized system there, and you have a second one that might reside in Azure or something like that. You know, so sometimes when it comes down to critical systems, it can be very hard to explain to people that no, even these big systems can actually shut down or fail in one area. So to build in that resilience, you really have to kind of look a bit further than you're looking maybe today.
We were having a bit of a sidebar discussion before this, weren't we, about the whether or not you could rely upon virtualization to work in a disaster. Mm-hmm. I think I have got to say this in front of other people because otherwise it'll drive me crazy for the rest of the week. So virtualization is a tool. It is not something that is dependent. If the hardware isn't working, the application on top of it isn't going to work. That includes the virtualization infrastructure. The fact that virtualization is there is not, in fact, it's not in and of itself a reliability impactor. That's what I'm trying to say. So do not get sucked into the argument that day 2 after the apocalypse, your virtualization software isn't going to work, and that's why you need to stick with an application. No, it's still going to be there, or it's not going to be there because it's a hardware problem.
That's a great point. So it's actually, our time is up on this piece as well. And if you want to find out more from Ian and from Lee, always great insights as well, check out the forum as well for the Automation Village. And look forward to tuning in next month and having you guys all join us as well. And thanks, Ian. Thanks, Lee. And we'll see you again next month.
See you around.
It's a blessing, guys.
Take care. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, guys. Now, if you at home were one of the hundreds of lucky people who were at VTScadafest just a few weeks ago, you would remember Ian Schmertzler from 2 of the presentations that he gave. Now, this is our first time back at VTScadafest. I couldn't be there. How did it go?
It was amazing. So as many people know, 2020 VTScadafest came in just under the wire before the pandemic. I think we were the last live event for many, many people.
We really should not have gone to Disneyland
We shouldn't. We did. We went to Disney after 2020 for the weekend. So we all came home after VTScadafest and, you know, we're feeling great about it. And then, of course, worldwide pandemic. So 2021 is coming along and we thought, okay, well, we should start thinking about VTScadafest. And the thought was, well, we can't have VTScadafest. So in 2021, we subsidized with Summerfest, which was an awesome virtual event last August. You know, we had Glenn and Barry come on and they talked about new features and we had a bunch of different technical sessions. We also had a magician. So Summerfest was awesome, but I was really, really happy to get back to VTScadafest this year.
Because things were still kind of ongoing and things were a bit touchy and you know, touch and go, we kind of had lower expectations this year. We've been growing every year before that, but it kind of worked out okay.
Yeah, it definitely did. So as you say, it was touch and go. We kept thinking, are we going to have VTScadafest? And we did. And even with travel restrictions still in place, the crowds really surprised us how many people still came. So thank you to everybody. You know, the dedication to VTScada and VTScadafest was really overwhelming. It was really great. And again, we had people from all around the world. Some notable locations people traveled in from: Ecuador, the Netherlands, and our furthest away guest is probably from India.
Nice.
So yeah, we had some great representation.
So real quick, give me one fun, crazy highlight.
Oh my gosh. So it had to be Butt Sketch. And yes, It is exactly what you think it is. So it's this amazing artist. His name is Crandall Lee. And so you come up and you think you're going to get this portrait drawn of you.
This is during the opening reception.
Yes, that's right. Wednesday evening.
Everyone's all dolled up.
Yes. And so you walk up and you think he's going to sketch you. And then he asks you to turn around. And he sketches your butt. But it was great fun. He was busy the whole 3 hours, didn't get a break. People just couldn't wait to get their butt sketched.
Like
and it was
lovely
great.
Memento to take home with them.
Yes, it was. It was really, really fun. Right. So again, thank you to the original butt sketch and Crandall Lee. We had a great time with that. So
now let's get to the awards, because every year at VTScadafest, this is a great opportunity to give away some hardware to some valued customers and partners. And what better way to do that than in a giant ballroom with a rock and roll light show? How did that all go?
You know, it was perfect. So as Chris mentioned, this is a great time that we like to take to recognize our partners that work throughout the whole year, the dedication to VTScada. So we had about 30 SI sales awards that we did give out. And then we had all of our top awards. So to our top SI went to Blackrock Automation. Our top OEM went to Xylem. Our top end user went to the St. Lawrence Seaway Management Corporation. And our top reseller went to our Western distributor, our Western Canadian distributor, Betsem. But along with those awards, we gave out a ton of prizes. We were giving out prizes like we couldn't help it.
You're prize happy.
That's right. And so one of those prizes was also this limited edition Automation Village t-shirt that is branded with VTScadafest as well. So this is the chance.
Do I have to write in to get one of those t-shirts? I don't have one of those
You
shirts.
don't have to write in. Even Chris doesn't have one of these t-shirts, but it's your chance to get one of these t-shirts. So the first 5 people who email me right now, natasha.lutz@trihedral.com, with your address, I'm going to send you one of these limited edition t-shirts. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Now, there was one new thing this year. You had a brand new award that we rolled out for the first time.
We did. It was the Innovation Award, and we fielded submissions for a few months. We went through them. There was a panel here at Trihedral that reviewed all the submissions, and we chose the winner. And let's see that video now.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kyle Hyland with Blackrock Automation. I'm the Vice President of U.S. Operations located here in Houston. We also have an office in Calgary, Alberta. What I wanted to show you today is the changes we made to the mapping system. But first, I want to show you this cool feature. We can change themes and colors by enabling whatever theme we want. We have a blue theme and a dark theme. These themes can be changed to whatever color you want. Now, onto the maps. The customer wanted to overlay their site drawings on this map so they could locate their site equipment and zoom in for details. We use the GIS mapping system to take the site drawings and convert it into Slippy maps and import them into the rear of VTScada so they can be used within the software. The more you zoom in, the more information you can find. Of course, if you click on the icons, it'll bring up the I/O list and the live data. Thank you, everyone. Once again, I'm Kyle Hyland with Blackrock Automation.
So back in 2001, I was attending IT college in the building right behind me. And one day, one of my fellow students taps me on the shoulder and says, "Look at this." And he shows me his laptop running Linux. And I said, "Is that a good idea? We're supposed to be running Windows NT at this school." And he said, "No problem." He clicked, and suddenly we were looking at Windows 98. And he clicked again, and we're back to Windows NT. So he explained that he was using a software called VMware, and that allowed him to create any number of software-based or virtual computers on one single physical computer. Now, in his mind, the value of this technology was for software testing. You could effectively test your code on any version of any operating system that you wanted to, and you could also reset your test bed back to 0 in just a matter of seconds. Now, since then, virtualization has transformed how we manage industrial systems, both on the IT and OT sides of the fence. It's become a standard tool for managing things like system resources, hardware costs, backups, failovers, and even network security. You can even virtualize devices for data storage or for network access. But the real value of this technology became clear with the emergence of web-based hosting services like Microsoft Azure or Amazon Web Services. In fact, when most people talk about virtualization today, it's really synonymous with both virtualized computing and cloud-based systems. The next few minutes will be a primer for those who are new to all this, while hopefully providing the pros with a few things to consider in an ever-changing industrial landscape. The basics. In its simplest form, a virtualized system consists of a physical computer called a host that runs a program called a hypervisor. This program allocates resources like CPU, RAM, and network across however many virtual server instances, or VSIs, that you choose to create. Pros. Dividing up a powerful modern server lets you manage its resources more efficiently. Rather than using a whole computer to run one application, you can instantiate separate, smaller VSIs that can all run on one machine. In addition to reducing hardware and maintenance costs, this greatly reduces electrical usage and rack space. Cons: the obvious danger here is that the host computer is a single point of failure. Having multiple redundant VSIs on one machine is fine, but if the system's mission critical, you had better have more than one host. Now, there are infinite variations on virtualization, but here are some of the most common. One or more virtualized machines on premises, or prem. This is the scenario basically we just described. You own and operate one or more host computers on your site. You create and you run applications across the virtual server instances that you drop onto these hosts. The pros: each VSI can easily be backed up. Plus, since VSIs contain all of the server resources and other virtual components your application expects, you can move it to a new host more easily than moving between traditional servers. Cons: if your backed up application has issues, every VSI you deploy will too. When configuring your application, take the same care to record system settings like device IDs and IP addresses that you would on a traditional server. If these settings were auto-filled, you may never be able to find them again later. Knowledge transfer is critical. These backed up VSIs can stay around longer than the staff who created them. Make sure you capture as much as you can about their limitations and dependencies. Next, a complete dedicated virtualized system in the cloud. In this variation, you lease a physical server on a cloud platform like Azure or AWS that you completely control and share with no one. You remotely install and configure all the software that makes up your system, and the hosting company is just responsible for the health and uptime of the server itself. Pros: you have a giant company that is responsible for your system uptime. Plus, these companies offer very flexible leasing options. Cons: you are still responsible for setting up and maintaining all of your cloud assets. Also, this is not the place where everybody knows your name. It won't be the most personal experience, and you can't go see your hardware, even if there's a problem. Remember that while the big players rarely go down, they do and have gone down. Again, if your system's critical, you may want to spread your application across 2 hosting providers. Next, a complete shared virtualized system in the cloud. This is just like the previous example, except you share the physical servers with one or more other customers. The pros: it can be significantly cheaper than a dedicated system. Cons: you may find that your application is competing for system resources with other customers, resulting in poor performance or even loss of service. As with the previous example, a secondary provider is better for very important systems. Finally, Akkolo. Akkolo is a data center that rents out rack space to customers for their servers and network hardware. Once you drop off the hardware, the Akkolo staff manages it for you. Pros: you can have a much more personal experience. And if there's a problem, you can actually go to site and check it out. Best of all, they manage your server hardware for you. Cons: they could go out of business or change business priorities. They may only have a small number of staff, and that staff may not typically be required to maintain zero downtime. Do your due diligence and don't be swayed by the number of banks they have as customers. Ensure that they have multiple ISPs, UPSs, and AB power providers. Now, many tout that they have 99.999% uptime. Check the fine print And do the math. This may still add up to more downtime per month than you can afford. And if they do go over, you may only get a refund of that month's hosting fee. A final thought. Hackers and bad actors can spend months or even years quietly snooping around your network before they make their move. In recent years, companies like Dispel have begun using virtual servers to create dynamic network architectures that regularly change to prevent bad guys from mapping them. As big systems get bigger and small ones become more critical, virtualization will continue to play a valuable role in reducing costs and maintaining uptime. And yes, they are still great for testing code.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Questions with Nat, our monthly time where we field your questions. So I did have a direct message come in during your documentary that somebody wants to know, does VTScada support virtualization?
Right, so good question. So VTScada is great in virtualized environments. We've got, for over like 15 years, we've been creating hosted SCADA systems, which is one form of virtualization where you have, say, a single provider like an integrator who has a number of servers, and they offer a hosted cloud-based solution that their clients connect to via thin clients. That's one way to do it. There's also a hybrid approach whereby the client would have a server at their property, and then their backup server would be part of this hosted solution. We're also used in simple SCADA solutions that are just up in the Azure, in the cloud, all sorts of variations on that. So VTScada is well suited for those. If you are sort of putting together your own server farm in order to host, just make sure that you choose hardware that has all the resources it needs. You'd be surprised, most people underestimate you literally have multiple computers running on a computer, and that uses up resources way faster than you think. And you also have to think forward in terms of things of failover to alarm modems. Thank you, Chris. Alarm modems, which because there's only one physical box, it's hard to have more than one set of physical connections. So something like Twilio is a nice solution since you're already working in an online environment. That's a nice third-party way of solving that problem. And so yes, the bottom line is if you want a virtualized system, go get VTScada. We're great for that.
Perfect. And producer Pete, do you mind bringing Keith back on for this next question? Keith,
hey,
all right. So this is one that I took from VTScadafest. We used a conference app this year for the first time, and it was on fire. People were engaging in that like crazy. And so I thought this was a really good one to bring back for Questions with Nat on this episode. So Keith, is there an event log that you can show the most used applications and or pages in VTScada, or some applications or pages that are not being utilized? This would allow us to declutter and fix underutilized pages.
Wow. Okay, that is a great question, and I think the answer is multifold. The first answer is no. But we never like that as an answer. So let me qualify that. Out of the box, we don't actually record page visits to any of our SCADA pages or applications, but you can do it. So one of the things that VTScada, we have a full scripting engine available. And actually, we have a number of APIs that make it really quite straightforward for you to be able to do exactly what you're looking to do. So I would suggest creating like a very simple widget that you could drop on a page that could increment the count of an internal calculation tag in VTScada. So every time the page is visited, it would just increment that counter so that you would then have some record of that. You could then attach events to that to record that when it changes or when it passes a certain amount. We also have an API that allows us to record to our own event log. We can actually record to the Windows event log if that's something that you wanted to have at an operating system level. So there's just a number of ways that you could very simply few lines of script code or just a little bit of configuration with some widgets and tags that you would be able to record in the event log, page visits, or application starts. It's a great question.
So what I hear from this is Keith has just volunteered to do the SCADA tip and trick for next month's episode. Perfect.
I'm off the hot seat.
So with that,
hung out to dry completely there. Okay.
We love to call this segment also throwing people under the Automation Village bus. So with that, send us your very hard questions. We will ask them again next month in May. But I would like to invite Pete back on just as we wrap up this episode. So Pete, if you can join us. Hi, Pete.
Hi, guys.
All right, perfect. So did you have some thanks you wanted to say to people?
Oh, we're going right into the closing.
Yes.
Welcome to the closing of the show. This is our favorite part of the show. First of all, we wanted to thank everybody, Lee Kibler, Ian Schmertzler, Pam Moss, of course, producer Pete Diffley. Hi, Pete. And which brings us now to parting remarks. Pete, go.
Yeah, just remember, everyone, please subscribe both on our forum and also on our YouTube channel. And check us out all the time. Just hit that like and subscribe. That'd be great.
Excellent. Natasha.
Yeah, so if you need professional development hours for this time that you spent with us, we are happy to give certificates of attendance. You just need to follow the link that I'm going to put in the chat over on the forum to a survey to fill that out, and it will kick it off to get your certificate.
And now I'm going to point at Keith.
Hey, so if you're interested in learning a bit more about VTScada, head on over to our website, VTScada.com, where you can download VTScada Lite. It is a free for commercial use, 50 IO license, which is fully featured. It's got all the functionality of VTScada, and it's the perfect way to introduce yourself into the VTScada software.
All right, that brings us to the end. Thanks for your time, everybody. We always appreciate it, and we'll see you again in May.
Bye.
Bye.